My guest today is Laura George. She is a mom of 11 children who homeschooled her kids for 20 years before launching Compass Prep Academy in 2005 in Cherokee County, Georgia, just north of Atlanta. Compass Prep Academy is a faith-based hybrid homeschool program that is open to everyone. And hybrid homeschool programs really began to emerge back in the mid 1990s, but have gained tremendous traction over the past decade, and especially over the past 3 years of education disruption as more families turn to homeschooling. Like many hybrid homeschool programs, Compass is an accredited program that meets several days a week off-site with hired teachers. When Laura started back in 2005, Compass Prep met 2 days a week with about 35 students. Today, Compass students meet 3 days a week off-site, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, with a Monday option if they need additional time out of the home. And enrollment this year just began with about 75 students, including some who attend with help from the state's tax credit scholarship program, which is a limited school choice program for low-income students in the state of Georgia. Laura recently stepped away from the day-to-day operations of Compass and is now working on creating multiple satellite locations across the state. Laura George, welcome to the Liberated Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm beyond honored because, as I've told you, your book, Unschooled, has changed my trajectory. I didn't tell you this part. I'm writing a book, and I had planned to have this whole part on philosophy and history and all that. And now I'm just going to say, read Carrie's book, and then you can read mine. Because yours is perfect. I've never underlined and made comments in a book more than yours. No kidding.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. And I can't wait to read your book as well. So, Laura, you've been really a pioneer in homeschooling. I know we chatted before recording that you were really on the edge of the kind of legality of homeschooling back when you began teaching your children at home. I wonder if you could take us back to that moment in time and tell us what it was like before kind of homeschooling hit the mainstream.
Well, I was probably about 10 years behind where there were people worried about getting arrested for homeschooling in Georgia, or getting defects called on them or something like that. But when we started, it was still risky because so few people really understood homeschooling, or very few people had even heard of someone who was homeschooling. So it's still kind of a lonely path. And we wouldn't let our kids go outside during the school hours because we were afraid somebody might report us to the authorities. And so there was a little bit of just that tension there, a little stress involved. And my children were like wild animals, and I could not keep them inside. And so they were outside half naked, jumping on the trampoline in January with no clothes on practically. So it was like, that was real stressful for me because of our particular lifestyle. So that was a challenge, but we've come a long way since then. And now I don't think there's probably anybody in the world that doesn't know what homeschooling is. And they don't hardly raise an eyebrow anymore. So I feel blessed to have been on the back end of that. And now, after 20 years of homeschooling, and now almost 20 years of running Compass, so almost a whole generation of working with this system of education and getting to see the changes that are so good. And now this groundswell, that's so exciting. COVID helped us so much in awakening people to see that they can do it themselves, and that their kids will be better off under their hen's wings, so to speak, than to just put them on the yellow school bus and send them off. So I'm really excited for what I see, because I've been doing it for so long. And, I'm not afraid to do things differently. But at the same time, it's so great to see so many educational entrepreneurs rising up and offering these services for people to give them courage to do something different. So it's, yeah, it is just a joy to me to be on this end of things, and not only to see my own children and how they've been blessed by uh, being at home and being able to kind of do their own thing and find themselves. But now some of my children are homeschooling their children. And so it's, you see the
Mm.
generational foundation being built. So that's really exciting.
Full circle. That's amazing. And
Mhm.
I'm sure feels really validating for you that it was such a positive
Very
experience for
much.
your children that they feel inclined to homeschool their children as well. And I wonder, Laura, if you could talk a little bit about, why you decided to homeschool your children. And then, what are you seeing today with Compass families in particular about why they're choosing to homeschool? Is it same reasons, different reasons? Tell us a little bit about that.
For our family, we wanted to homeschool, I think primarily because um, we needed to know what they were being taught. It wasn't so much about getting them like advanced academically. Some homeschool families were like their kids were 3 grade levels ahead or whatever. That was not important to us, but their character was, and we wanted to make sure that when they were small that we were the ones shaping their character. And so we chose that path and decided that we would stick with it, come thick or thin, and most of the time it was thin. um, after just 1 year trying to teach my oldest her like to read, just the kindergarten stuff. Um, I quit in January because I was so frustrated. I said, I can't do this. I'm not a trained educator. I have no background in education. I always played school when I was a kid. That's about the extent of I love to play school. But then when I got in school, I was ADD and dyslexic before they had a name for it. And so I just felt like I was a failure. I was just stupid in school, even though I love to read and I love to explore and do research, but school didn't fit me. And so I just felt stupid. So I decided that in homeschooling, I could kind of do it the way it would have worked for me and let each of our 11 children be who they were meant to be. And my job was just to be an observer and see what their natural bent was, and then to have the privilege to feed into that natural leaning, whether it was being an engineer or a mathematician or a musician or an artist. I was, and we have a little bit of all of that in our family. So it was the freedom aspect, I think, that we were after the most. But I also felt like a total failure most of the first probably 15 years. And I thought my children would probably be better off in a Russian orphanage than in my home, because I was just pulling my hair out. I felt like I was not doing a good job at all. And so that was kind of the motivation to create a learning community where I wasn't the only one teaching them. And so Compass was born sort of out of that, or needing a school that would have worked for me as a dyslexic, dysgraphic, and all of the disses, all of the labels that they have now. Um, it works for all those kids, and there's so many people when I tell them about what we do at Compass, they'll just say, "Oh, I wish so much there'd been a school like that for me," because so many people would have fared better in that environment. So yeah, so that's kind of the backstory. I felt like a total failure, and once I was in, well, once my fourth child went to college, he fell through every crack I had, every crack. He didn't learn to read till he was 11. He he was smart, very smart, but he just fell through the cracks. And so when he went to college and did well in college, and he only went to play baseball, he didn't go because he liked school, but then he finished. So when he succeeded in college, I was like, dang, that was okay. I guess I wasn't a failure. And then I began to say, well, maybe other people would like to do this kind of school with me in community. And that's when Compass started. I just took it. I took what we did at home that was different and weird, and I took it out, and other people liked it and jumped on board.
Yeah, and you said to me earlier that you were involved in various homeschool co-ops before launching Compass, but that you really wanted something that was going to be more structured, more, slightly more formal than a co-op, that would have hired educators, and that was really sort of your vision for creating this hybrid homeschool program. I just want to go back to it for a minute, Laura, though, to hear, what are you seeing today with families who are choosing Compass? Are they choosing it for the same reason that you chose homeschooling, sort of character development and making sure that you kind of have a say in the curriculum, or are there different reasons?
That's a great question. I think today there's a lot of different reasons because everyone doesn't come to us for any one particular reason. Like there's some are drawn because we are faith-based and they feel like their student is not going to be taught things that are contrary to what they believe. And we do have a statement of faith, so people can see that up front and opt out if they don't like that, or come on in if they do. We always just say, if we had a student come once and he said, "I'm an atheist. Is that okay?" And I said, "Well, I'm a Christian, and what we do at school is kind of Christian. We pray with people. We bring out the scriptures when there it's appropriate to do that." And I said, "But if you can stand us, we can stand you." And so he came and was a delight, and it was a wonderful match. He was very non-traditional, and so this young atheist man just did very well at Compass. We don't beat people up with anything, so it's just an environment that we want to create that's very loving and accepting, and yet has boundaries, um, and that's very clearly stated in our statement of faith. So we kind of use that as a way to say, "Hey, read this, see what you think, and jump on in if you're comfortable with that." So, but we don't push things on people at all.
So tell us how Compass works. So you're meeting, families are meeting, or not families, students it's a drop-off program. Students are coming 3 days a week for sort of a full suite of academics.
Mhm.
You mentioned to me that while you're a Christian hybrid homeschool program, you don't usually use Christian curriculum. You sort of put together various curriculum to meet the needs of the individual children, and to make sure you're hitting kind of academic expectations that are important to you and to the families in the program. So what are students doing those 3 days a week, and then as well as that optional Monday option that you said a lot of families are interested in too, because you have some single parent families and families that might not be able to homeschool full time, which is another appealing attribute of Compass. So yeah, tell us about the week. What does it look like?
Well, Tuesdays and Thursdays are what we would call our core academic days. So we have a focus on, primarily for the elementary, it's primarily reading and math. That's like top priority. Everything else is just fun exploration. There's no pressure at all. There's really not even pressure with the reading and math. We just really want them to get a good foundation in those things. And then for the older students, say fifth and up, they have also the 2 days a week, and they have their focus on reading and math, but then they're starting to dig a little deeper into the other subjects such as history and science and foreign language, and um, all the other fun things that we do. But still, there's not a big emphasis on grades or testing. It's much more discovery and exploration, and just kind of the excitement of learning about new things. And one way we do that is our Wednesdays. So Tuesday, Thursday is academic primarily. Wednesdays, we do a lot of our electives in the morning, the arts, we do computer coding, we do project-based learning, we do all kinds of just enriching stuff, music, drama, all those things. We usually have a program twice a year for music and drama. And then in the afternoons, we've had a program from the beginning called Off Road, which kind of goes along with Compass Prep. We like to take them outside the box, so to speak. So we go out in the community. We bring community leaders to us to speak about what they do. We go visit businesses. We've done, I mean, some of the crazy things we've done. We've gotten to see a cat have its eyeball removed, which it sounds really gross, but there were kids in our group that really were interested in veterinary medicine. And so we get to go to a vet and we get to watch surgeries. There's so many people in the community that if they're passionate about what they do, most likely they're going to let you come in because they can't wait to tell you about what they do. And that can be anything from beekeeping to manufacturing prosthetic limbs to woodworking, you imagine it, and we've done it. And we also have big emphasis on outdoor exploration, outdoor education. So we do a lot of hiking, camping, creek days where they just get all muddy and dirty and come home so happy because they've been outside all day digging and playing in the dirt. And it's just a very organic way. It's the way I raised my own children, with those things that were important to me, to get them outside. People used to ask me, how do you get your children to go outside? And I'm like, how do you keep yours in? Because it wasn't that I was getting them to, I could not keep them inside. And so they benefited from that outdoor experience. And that's something that there was a book I read called Nature's Last Stand, or you've probably heard of it.
There's
It was
Last
about
Child in the Woods. Is that what you're
Last
thinking?
Child in, yeah,
Richard
that's it.
Lee.
Last Child in the Woods. I was way off.
Yeah.
But it's about nature deficit disorder.
Yeah.
And that's something that is very common today with the video games and all that. So we just spend a lot of time outdoors with the school kids. We have done an annual camping trip until COVID, and now we're about to pick that back up again. But that was a highlight of the year. We've taken as many as 90 people homes to campgrounds, and it's not wilderness camping, but for some of the kids who've never ever slept outdoors, it's like monumental for them to actually do this camping trip. So there's a lot of things that we do that stretch them in a way that makes them uncomfortable without doing damage. We don't want to damage anybody, but we do want them to get uncomfortable so that they learn more about themselves and they face hardship and they overcome it. And it's a very, very tight, interesting community because there's all different kinds of kids. Like I said before, we accept anybody from any background, and we have amazing honor student type, like fly high, shoot for the moon. They're so motivated. And then we have others that come and they're so deflated and they're virtually paralyzed because of something that's happened in their life. And so we have everything in between. But the beauty of that is we have this synergy that the ones who are strong help the ones who are weak, and the ones who are weak look at those who are strong and they have hope. So it's not a school where you segment off the honor students from the deflated ones. They're all together. We cheer for all of them equally, not just the ones that are Harvard bound, but sometimes the one that are Burger King bound. I mean, it's all of that is good. And so we celebrate every kid, and that's why we're small. We want to know them. We want to make sure they're seen and heard and celebrated. And it's been amazing. It has been, aside from having my 11 children, raising them, and they're all grown. The youngest is 22. Besides that, this has been the greatest experience of my life, and the things that I've grown in ways that I wouldn't have otherwise, and my kids have grown. But it's just been such an honor to get to see lives change, especially those deflated ones. They're my favorites. I love the really motivated ones too, but I really cherish getting to bring those kids in who are kind of like in intensive care in a sense, or maybe even on life support, and watching them come alive and get on their feet and then soar. And that is like my heart and soul. That's what I do this for.
And it's amazing, Laura. I mean, what rejuvenates them? What is it about the Compass Prep environment that restores these deflated children, as you put it?
Believe that it starts with our staff. um, it starts with the way they view and treat the students, because we believe, because of our faith, we believe that every student is made in the image of God, unique, like what's the word, unrepeatable. They are a one of a kind. And so it's like going on a treasure hunt for all of us to find the treasure in that little image of God. And the beautiful thing is, when we do that, when we model that, and it's like I said, we don't have a lot of rules. There's boundaries, there's good clear boundaries, but we don't have a lot of nitpicky rules about haircuts and dress codes and all that. It's more just let's learn to be considerate of each other, and you know, have your own personal space and just kind of human stuff. And but no, not really arbitrary rules. So we don't have a lot to fuss at them about, and they don't feel like they're in trouble all the time. And so even the ones that do kind of act out, we deal with them in such a way that it's gentle and restorative, redemptive. And when there's conflict, we deal with it immediately, and I believe, deal with it biblically in a way that is gentle and nurturing and disciples them forward in life. And so they come in and they realize that they're safe. They realize they're not going to feel like they're in trouble all the time. Like I said, we don't have a dress code, but we just say, it's pretty simple. We say, girls, cover your parts, and you know what parts we're talking about. We don't have to have a 17-page dress code to delineate that. Just cover up and we'll all be happy. And if there's ever a time when a girl comes and she's like not quite covered up enough, and everybody knows what that means, it's so funny. They all know what that means. So one time I had a little girl come in, and she said, they call me Mama G at school. And she said, Mama G, do you like my tunic top? This is when those were really popular. And I was like, yes, it's adorable, but I think you forgot your pants. And because she had nothing on under it, it was a tunic. She was short, so she could kind of pull it off, but it was really short. So I said, let's go to Walmart. And I took her to Walmart and bought her a pair of leggings that matched her tunic top, and everything was great. And she never did that again. No, and she wasn't malicious, or it wasn't like that. But if there's ever anything that needs to be addressed, we just address it straight up, very privately, and very without shame, without coercion. We don't want the kids to be fearful of anything when they come. And so when we model that, then the kids miraculously model that to each other. They let their own guard down. They're not as quick to jump on somebody else because they're different or whatever. And because kids can come dressed any way they want. That is my decision in order to get to know them the way I want to know them, because what they wear says a lot about what's going on inside. And it's not just about detecting flaws. It's more about seeing their personality come out. It helps me to get a window into them. And if I had them wear all the same things, uniforms or t-shirts or whatever that were matching, I would miss that, and we wouldn't get to know them. And I think that's a huge part of the question that you asked was, how do we do that? How do students transform? It's because they're free. They know they're free in that environment, and they just feel secure. I think that one little girl came, and she actually came and spent the night at my house with one of my daughters, and she hadn't brought a change of clothes. It was a spur of the moment thing. So she was going to have to wear the same thing to school the next day that she'd worn the day before. And she was fretting over it. And then she said, well, you know what? It doesn't matter, because nobody cares. Nobody at this school cares what you're wearing. You just get to wear whatever you want. Kids come barefoot. There was a girl that came barefoot for 4 years straight, graduated valedictorian, went to North Georgia College and went barefoot there too. And never, nobody ever cared. The kids can wear pajamas, whatever. That's enough about dress code, but that's just one
Yeah.
aspect
Well,
of
yeah.
how we make it comfortable. It feels like home. It feels like home.
And
So
that
that's what we
transformative
want.
power of freedom that we see
It
in all
is.
parts of our lives and in
Uh-huh.
education, of course, as well. So, hybrid homeschool programs, as I mentioned, really began to appear kind of the mid 1990s. Eric Warren, who is a professor at Kennesaw State University and is also the director of the National Hybrid Schools Project. And you and I have met at the National Hybrid Schools Project conference, which I highly recommend to listeners and viewers. That's held every
Mhm.
April in Georgia. Um, and Eric has done a lot of research on hybrid homeschools and has interviewed founders. And one of the things that he's discovered is that some hybrid homeschools choose to become recognized private schools, and some prefer to stay as sort of homeschool collaboratives. And it's really often a matter of a preference, or in some states it could be around state regulations. For you and your hybrid homeschool program with Compass, you decided to stay as more of a homeschool program, but it's
Mhm.
accredited, which is really fascinating. So it's an accredited K-12. You have elementary, middle, and high school um,
Mhm.
hybrid program. Tell us about how that worked out.
Well, I debated about it. It was probably five. It was in our fifth year that we sought accreditation, and I toiled with the idea, and there were good arguments on both sides. But being in the homeschool community, there were more, seemed to be more arguments against accreditation because of the fear of government intrusion and having to, you know, jump through hoops and things that, and I'm anybody who knows me knows I am not a hoop jumper, and unless it makes sense. But if it doesn't make sense, I'm not jumping it. And so I looked at what was required by this accrediting agency, and they're well known, very well respected. They've been in Georgia for over 100 years, accrediting public and private schools. But because of the rise of these hybrids, they developed a non-traditional educational, and there's a C in it, but I can't remember. Anyway, it's called an NTech, and that it accommodates a wide variety. It's kind of like a dumping ground, actually, for all of the people that don't fit public and private. They're just like, oh, we'll put you in this little pond. And but the beautiful thing is, I didn't have to change anything about my vision, about wanting there to be freedom, about being able to choose our curriculum the way we wanted to, and to create curriculum, to do all of our exploring outdoors and all that. I didn't have to change a thing. And so I'm like, well, it's it's kind of a no-brainer. If I can do something for my parents that will help them in the event they want to, their kids want to go on to higher education, and many of them do, that this would just help grease the wheels for that and make it a smooth passage rather than the parents having to pull all these things together. And so we did that, and I haven't regretted it 1 minute. We also have something, I didn't mention this to you. We have something called directed studies, which is for totally independent students that don't set foot in any of our classes. They are just purely homeschooled. They might take a class here or there. They might have taught themselves something, and so we give credit on their transcript for that. We do that in our academy as well. They can create their own course, and we find a number that matches it in all the official course books for college entrance, and we create basically their profile on a transcript that then translates into college entrance, scholarship qualifications, military. That's another one that in that comes and goes, but currently I think you cannot join the military without an accredited high school diploma. Um, and it changes back and forth. I think it depends on how high the recruiting stats are. But at the time we were became accredited, you could not join the military without it. And so that was another key on the keychain, so to speak, for parents and students to be able to do their schooling in a very flexible homeschool like environment and still have all the benefits of going to a private school. So that was our decision. I think there's still probably people who would criticize it because of they think it's government overreach or something like that, but we haven't experienced that at all. And that's a state by state thing, I'm sure. But where we are, it's worked for us, and we're going to go with it.
So Laura, if a family was going to join Compass and do the 3-day or the add in the optional 4-day, what is the tuition?
For I think for the 3-day is around 5,000 a year for middle and high school. It's a little less than that for elementary. And then if you add Mondays, it's $100 per month per family. So that part is really inexpensive. And we're flexible enough where we have had students who've come just to take a particular course with us. We don't advertise that, but we welcome it. If somebody asks, then we will make that work if there's room in that class. We had a Mandarin Chinese teacher for 6 years, and it was a wonderful opportunity. And so there were kids from outside our group that wanted to take Mandarin, so we allowed that. We also allow, and when they're juniors or seniors, is when they can dual enroll here in Georgia. And so we kind of push them out the door in a sense after 10th grade, because if they're ready and that's what they want to do, we just really encourage it, because how can you beat free college? And getting to do that while you're in high school, while you're at home, and it's not rocket science. We push them to do that. And so a lot of our older students don't come to our academy classes, or they might come for just a math or just something that they need to fill in a gap. But we really want them by that age to be launching, to get that one foot out in the adult world, and really the whole time they're with us from middle school on, we're honing in to their particular gifts and talents and interest, and fanning those flames and helping connect them with people in the community that do the same thing, that can encourage them. So it's very future focused, and it's not okay, just do all these courses and you'll graduate high school. We always ask what it is they see themselves doing later, and that's their graduation requirement. We want them to work backwards from what their goals are. So everybody's high school diploma or transcript definitely doesn't look the same. It depends on what they want to do next. So it's not, we do follow the state guidelines in terms of what they recommend is done for college. But even there's many colleges who require something different than what our state does, either more or less. And so, or if it's a private college, they may not care what the state says. So it's, again, if they want to go to college, we say investigate several colleges, find out what they want, and then that's what you'll do for high school, so that it fits. It's like tailor-made to their goal.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the beauty of individualized learning, and being able to customize that learning through a more bespoke educational environment like you've created with Compass. And also, at roughly $5,000 a year, Compass is much more affordable than other private schools. And this is true of
the lowest
schools
in our area for sure. And even on top of that, we offer scholarships.
Right. So that's what I wanted.
That would have been too much for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about that too. So, $5,000 a year, like many micro schools, already more financially accessible to families than traditional private school options, but still financially out of reach for some families.
For a lot of people.
I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about scholarship programs. I know some students, you said, participate through the Georgia Tax Credit Scholarship Program, which is a school choice program that exists in some states that enables either individuals or businesses to contribute to a scholarship program and receive a tax credit for that donation. And then those funds go towards low-income students to enable them to attend private schools at a reduced tuition. So tell us a little bit more about accessibility and kind of what your sense is of that.
Well, our philosophy has been all along that if a parent explores this option, we have them come and shadow, the student shadows for a day or more, and they really get in the trenches to see if it would work for them. And after a period of time, if that's what they think is the best option for their child and that they can't afford it, we will figure out a way for that to happen. So that's not probably the best business practice, but it's always panned out in the end. And so, but we also ask them to contribute something. So it's not just a giveaway. It is, and very often we've had this happen many times where students themselves will work at the school to pay for their own tuition. And that's beautiful because then they really own it and they're proud of it. We've had students, a lot of young girls and some of our young men have been assistants in the elementary program. So they're not only relearning elementary principles as they help teach, but they're getting valuable job training, job experience. And I've written so many letters of recommendation for a kid who wants to go get their first quote real job. And I'm able to say, this is their work pattern. They show up, they do what they're asked to do, they're happy in their job. And so I'm able to equip a student even more if they're working for their education. And then parents can also work. It's like I said, it's not a co-op. So if there's something that they have that we can use, we'll match it up. And that's a way that they can help pay their tuition. And the only thing that we really require everyone to pay is the upfront fees and registration, because that's kind of the gas that keeps the lights on, and keeps us solvent through the year. But other than that, we've got the tax scholarship and I'm working on private donors and grants. I've gotten a number of grants that have helped fund that scholarship program. And that's my heart. It's, right now we meet in a church. We've always met in churches because it's a good partnership. Nobody in our program goes to the church where we meet. So there's no attachment whatsoever. But we have a really good relationship with them. It's a great facility. We're not in their way, they're not in our way. And it's a wonderful partnership. So I don't know that I'd ever really want to own a building. I've pursued that, but it seems like a poor use of funds to me to put it all in a building. And then you really got this heavy weight to have to fill the seats with students and tuition to pay the building cost. And so unless somebody gave us a building, I don't think I would probably pursue that, but and I'd willingly receive a building if somebody wanted to give it. But yeah, we try to keep our costs extremely low. And that again comes from my background of having 11 children, one income, living on an absolute shoestring and having to forage for things and make it work and be very resourceful. So that's the way we do it. And that gets passed on financially to the families that come. So, we're very, very frugal, and it works. You
And
don't
it
need to
works.
spend a time.
Yeah, and it works in that you have been running Compass now for almost 20 years successfully with seeing enrollment grow and seeing your students take off into the world and do great things. It must be so rewarding for you. And you
And they
last year,
come back. They keep coming back.
oh,
They too. I've got a student, former student now, who's one of my teachers. She went to school for education and she came back and now she's teaching there. And I've had that
amazing.
happen probably a handful of times where they love the model so much they go get trained, but then they come back and do it our way. So it's sweet.
Wow.
Good to have them.
So,
Good to have them
so
grown up and back.
So you left last year the day-to-day running of Compass. You have a new director who kind of manages the program. You have wonderful staff. You've said your teachers are
Mhm.
phenomenal. So you feel like
Yes.
Compass is in good hands and you're able to move on to other things. But of course, still, as you
Mhm.
said, the vision caster, I think is how you
Yeah.
put it,
Yeah.
which is wonderful. So I want to hear kind of what's next for you, because you're not just moving into retirement and kind of resting on your laurels. You're going and you want
Yeah.
to sort of spread this model throughout the state. So tell us what's on deck for you.
Well, I've had this vision for many years, and that's the way visions work. They're incubated and then they come to life. And I feel like Compass is like my 12th child. I always wanted a dozen. And so Compass is number 12, and now Compass is now almost 20 and launched and doing really well. So it's time for me to incubate the next vision. And I think it's the right time for that. I would like to have a satellite program where we plant similar models all over the state of Georgia. And Georgia is it's a wonderful place to live. It's very diverse in regions. Like we have the mountain region, which is a whole culture. We have the metro area, and then the suburbia around the metro area of Atlanta, and then Athens and some of the other larger cities in Georgia. We have coastal area, which is another culture. We have farming, like the plains area where there's lots of hardworking farmers. So what I'd love to do is have satellites in each of those areas, and then that we create a network where they share their stories with each other and their successes, their challenges, and all that. And then we ideally, I'd love to have an exchange program where we could have a student from the mountains trade places with a student from the coastal area, or have a small group of students go and visit the coastal branch or the metro. I'd love to have a couple of branches in inner city Atlanta. There's such a drastic need for something different for these kids, because so many times they can't afford. I think I read that in your book about it seems like alternative education is offered to the wealthier, the ones that even have a hope of thinking outside the box. But kids who are trapped in poverty and in generational poverty, they don't even have the dream of doing something different. And so they just get stuck on that assembly line of remedial, and just not letting them be the human beings and creative people that they are. They just kind of get stuck in this. And so I would love to take what we do into the inner city of Atlanta, which is pretty depressing in sections of it's really scary, depressing, and bring some light to them in hope. And but then, I love the idea of people taking our vision and running with it, whether they do a satellite through us or just take the idea. And that's why I'm anxious to get my book out this year. And thankfully to you, my book will be shorter because I'm going to package it with yours. And I'm just going to tell our story and how we're unique. And then hopefully people can take that if they're in Boise, Idaho, or, Santa Fe, New Mexico. They can do it anywhere because our model is doable in any setting. And so I'd like to think that maybe people would get a hold of my book and say, we can do this in our community. Let's do this, and call it whatever they want and do it any way they want. But I just want it to fuel the fire that people who are want to do something different and maybe don't know how, or don't have the courage, or think, oh, it'll never work. But to be able to say, if I can do it, anybody can do it, because I don't have the educational training. I was a stay-at-home mom, 11 kids, drowning in laundry, and thinking I was a total failure. And yet God gave me the idea that I then put out, and all these people jumped on, these qualified, capable people. And shout out to Denise Rudolph, who is like, I don't call her my right hand. She's both of my hands. She's like, she gets the vision and she gets it done. And I'm just beyond grateful to have her and other people on staff like her that make it work. And that's really the key to success. It's not even just about the vision. You can have a great idea all day, but it might not ever get feet on the ground unless you have those kind of people. And I'm not those kind of people. I'm if I didn't have my foot tethered to the ground, I'd probably just float away. So I'm like a hot air balloon, but I've got people who hold me down and get the ideas and then run with it. So I have full confidence that we can do this in other places in Georgia, and then maybe others will do it around the country too.
And now is the
So,
moment. I mean, we have so
yeah,
much momentum around alternative education, so much demand from parents for something new and different for their children. And education entrepreneurs like you who've successfully been running these alternative programs for a couple of decades now, being able to share your wisdom with others and encourage them to go off and build something in their own community. So I think that's so great.
yeah.
So Laura, what is the best way for my listeners and viewers to learn more about Compass, but also to make sure to stay connected with you and get updates when your book comes out and all of that?
I would say probably through our website would be the best place to connect with what we do specifically as a school. I unfortunately don't have a good blog link. I should have done that a long time ago. I've written so many things and I've put a few things out, but I have not done an official blog or a podcast or anything. But my email would probably be the very best way because I'm very consistent with that, and so I can answer anybody's questions, and you can put that in a link or whatever. It's just my name, Laura George, at compassprep.org. So
Wonderful.
it's
And I assume you'll also have a link to the book on the compassprep.org website when it's up. So that's probably also a good place for listeners and viewers to head to. And I just wish you so much luck, not only with completing the book and getting it out into the world, but with expanding your vision and throughout the state of Georgia, and then inspiring others to run with your vision all across the country. So Laura George, best wishes, and thank you so much for being on the Liberated podcast.
Well, thank you, Carrie. And I appreciate you being a frontline warrior in what I think is going to be an educational revolution, not in a negative sense, but in people just waking up and saying, we want something different and we can do it. And I appreciate so much the way you have led the way, not just with your book, but with your podcast. I listen to all of them, and it's just ignites my soul to hear all these different people in totally different backgrounds doing their thing to further alternative education. And that it's all about the kids, it's all about giving them opportunities that they wouldn't have if they were just in a status quo, even public or private school, but to do something that is unique to a community or a group of families or one family. So anyway, thank you. I so appreciate your work and so thankful to have gotten to meet you and for you to honor me by this interview. I really appreciate that.
Oh, thanks so much, Laura. I appreciate your kind words and look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right. Thank you, Carrie.